Welcome back. This is the South African Morning. Now, of course, today we have a special guest. We're joined by Ms. Busisiwe Mavuso, Business Leadership SA CEO. Of course, he'll talk us through all things business. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Very good morning to you.
Yeah. Morning, Jane. Good to see you again.
I think it's going to be a busy day for you today with the investment summit underway. Is anyone going to be investing? And if so, why?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the focus is going to have to be to consolidate what we've done in the past 2-3 years in as far as the investment summit is concerned. Because what brings investment through, Jane, is not these summits, but it is rather the economic reforms. So I think as a country, we're going to have to have that difficult conversation of when do we actually start, or when are we planning to start implementing the economic reforms to make the environment conducive, for investment? Because pledges during this time, when the environment is what it is, I think it's really a fallacy to think that there'll be any.
How long do you think it would take South Africa to get to a point whereby we are attractive for investment?
The answer lies in how quickly we actually put in place the interventions that we need to put in place, right? And we know what needs to be done. I mean, we've been talking about these things for the past 3 years, the issues around the skills visa, the issues around the spectrum, the issues around Section 25 of the Constitution, the issues around, the SOE reforms, And I think when you look at them, they really require a certain degree of policy amendment. So I think to the extent that government moves, along with a certain degree of speed in terms of implementing these, then we're definitely going to see, investment coming. Because make no mistake, South Africa still remains the most advanced economy in the continent.
Right.
So we still remain the most attractive, not the most attractive, but we still are attractive, as a gateway to the African continent. But remember, the interest in South Africa is not in South Africa in and of itself. It is South Africa as a gateway to the 1.3 billion people that exist in the continent. So if this gateway is not conducive, then Kenya is coming up, Rwanda is coming up, Egypt is coming up, Ethiopia is coming up.
Right.
So we're actually being given a run for our money, in terms of our competitiveness or our lack thereof, in this instance.
That's why we were shoved into brick, weren't we, to get just that. You touched on SOE, and I know that infrastructure and development and all of that is going to be a focus of this investment conference. Let's talk about what's happening at the SABC. I know you're pretty passionate about SOEs. I mean, this is a perfect example of why we cannot move forward. I mean, here is a business that is collapsing, that has collapsed. We're looking at a billion loss in the next financial year, and yet they cannot get rid of people. They've got, 30-day sick leave every single year. These are things that they want to change, but they can't. Why not?
Absolutely. And I think, Jane, the problem is in our ideology. We seem to have romanticized this notion of owning these SOEs, even when we cannot afford to. We've got such serious fiscal constraints in this country. We had the finance minister in his October medium-term budget speech talk about the budget deficit of 15.8%, when we had forecasted in February that the budget deficit was going to be 6.8%. So we have seen the number, of the budget deficit double, which shows that the state cannot really maneuver, doesn't have room to maneuver in terms of funding these SOEs.
Right.
So let's bring competition, let's bring competition into these industries. Allow the private sector to come in, allow, the state doesn't need to own these things, 100%. So to what extent, therefore, and the SAA is a case in point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have taken money which may have gone, I guess, to the SABC, and it's now 10.7 billion that is actually sitting at the SAA. So I think we're going to have to think differently about these things, but we've also been given a warning. The World Bank, just before the medium-term budget speech, spoke about the fact that forget about trying to get funding in the global capital markets, South Africa, if you're going to continue funding these SOEs, that are actually money guzzlers, and if you're going to continue to take this money to pay salaries, it just doesn't work. And I think you raise an important point, Jane, around, the productivity in these SOEs has actually not, gone up. We issued a press release as BUSA, I think a week ago, around how we compare from a public sector wages perspective, compared to the rest of the world. And you see how we have actually gone up by 70% in terms of the public sector wages over the past 10 years, and yet productivity has only gone up by 12%. So we are actually not in line, and we are not commensurate, not even with the developed, economies out there. So the public sector entire, cluster in this country is definitely overpaid, and we need to start having that, honest and earnest conversation, in terms of how do we deal with this, because the status quo is not sustainable. Something is going to have to give, and it's going to have to give soon.
Well, we're going to continue with this conversation, Busi. As you can see, we've got breakfast. Please enjoy your breakfast. We'll be having more of this business conversation, which I think is quite important to have at this time, given, the president is still, presenting at the third investment summit. But let's come to this now at this point. Well, the PAC is expected to protest at the Brackenfell High School today, which just recently clashes between EFF protesters and parents of pupils erupted outside the school, and demonstrators were upset because of a private matric farewell event which only white pupils and some teachers attended. Now, police have been asked to closely monitor the planned protests, and the DA is calling for both the PAC and EFF to be investigated for inciting violence.
UDM leader Bonto Holomisa will brief Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts on allegations of corruption at the Development Bank. Last month, he alleged there was deep-rooted corruption, maladministration and mismanagement at the bank. He urged Scopa to probe the state funder. Holomisa also took issue with DBSA board chair Nkoguana, saying he turned the institution into his personal spaza shop. The DBSA says Holomisa's allegations are unfounded. Let's take a quick look at the markets now.
All right, then, well, of course, as you can see, we've got our delicious breakfast here. It's looking so good. It's smelling even better. And our chef, Mandla, is here. I mean, Mandla, thank you so much for always delivering time and time again. But what do you have for us today, this morning? This is so beautiful.
Oh, thank you very much, ladies, to join me this morning. And today you have your breakfast ripe, and you're going to love that. And you have your medallions, and you have your butters, croissants on there, and some cream on the side, and your coffee, and your juice, ladies. And trust me, you're going to love that. You're going to enjoy the whole thing, and yeah.
Well, I can't wait for the camera to go off so I can take a bite.
Oh, my goodness. I'm going in.
Not dropping on my front. All right, thanks for that.